enthusiastically serving Krishna. Hopefully not just on Sundays, but every day, every moment. So I wanted to read, I'm on a marathon about dealing with certain issues which impact our ability to be a harmonious movement. And so I wanted to read this one famous, very famous verse from Bhagavad Gita, and especially the purport is very wonderful by Srila Prabhupada. This is second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, text number 56. Dukeshvanudvigdhamana Sukeshu vigatas priyaha Vitaragabhaya krodha sthita dhir muni uchati. So I'll just read the word for word, because they're important words. Dukeshu, in the threefold miseries. Anudvigdam anaha, without being agitated in mind. Sukeshu, in happiness. Vigatas priyaha, without being interested. Vita, free from raga, attachment. Bhaya, fear. Kodaha, and anger. Sthita, whose mind is steady. Muni, a sage. Uchate is called. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. One who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. Everyone can please repeat. One who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. Purport. The word muni means one who can agitate his mind in various ways for mental speculation without coming to a factual conclusion. It is said that every muni has a different angle of vision, and unless a muni differs from other munis, he cannot be called a muni in the strict sense of the term. Nashavishir yasya matam nabinam. Mahabharata, Vanaparva 313, 117. But a sthita dhir muni, as mentioned herein by the Lord, is different from an ordinary muni. The sthita dhir muni is always Krishna conscious, for he has exhausted all his business of creative speculation. He is called Prashanta Nishesha Mano Ratandara, or one who has surpassed the stage of mental speculation and has come to the conclusion that Lord Sri Krishna, or Vasudeva, is everything. Vasudevam Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. He is called a muni fixed in mind. Such a fully Krishna-conscious person is not at all disturbed by the onslaughts of the threefold miseries, for he accepts all miseries as the mercy of the Lord, thinking himself only worthy of more trouble due to his past misdeeds. And he sees that his miseries, by the grace of the Lord, are minimized to the lowest. Similarly, when he is happy, he gives credit to the Lord, thinking himself unworthy of such happiness. He realizes that it is due only to the Lord's grace that he is in such a comfortable condition and able to render better service to the Lord. And for the service of the Lord, he is always daring and active and is not influenced by attachment or aversion. Attachment means accepting things for one's own sense gratification, and detachment is the absence of such sensual attachment. But one fixed in Krishna consciousness has neither attachment nor detachment, because his life is dedicated in the service of the Lord. Consequently, he is not at all angry, even when his attempts are unsuccessful. Success or no success, a Krishna-conscious person is always steady in his determination. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Utpakatam Tadati Swaparantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, in this part of Bhagavad Gita, this is the definition of a person who is inactive in action. Meaning, even though they're acting, they're not creating any result. These are Krishna Arjuna in verse number 54, he asked Krishna 4 things. How does someone, what is the symptoms of the consciousness? And Krishna answers that this person is free from mental speculation. And then he says, how does he speak? So how does he speak? And means this is how he expresses himself. He speaks of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise he doesn't, most people in this world, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, they spend their whole life trying to avoid miseries and trying to pursue happiness. Just like, I always thought it was funny, in the Constitution of the United States, it says, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, which of course is the natural condition of the soul. But what their definition of happiness, and even their definition of liberty, which they themselves cannot even can agree upon. So there's 3 things that bother us, according to this verse. Raga, Dvesha, and Krodha. Or attachment, Dvesha, dislike or hatred or fear. Bhaya. Fear. And fear also, it means not only fear, it means anxiety. and krodha, anger. So I'm specifically focusing on, out of these three, on anger. Because anger is defined by Krishna as very dangerous. Mahashano Mahapapma. Krishna says, Kamesha Krodesha Rajaguna Samudbhavaha. That Rajaguna, the mode of passion, creates these things. Lust, and lust, this doesn't mean just the attraction for the opposite sex. Nowadays, people can't even figure out what sex they are, what to speak of what sex they pursue. So, but it means all kinds of material desire. Kama Isha Krodesha. And this desire ultimately turns into anger or frustration. Frustration is just, first we have a desire. If we can't satisfy our desire, we become angry. And then if even your anger doesn't work, you become frustrated. And of course this is described a little later on in the same chapter, that how this anger comes about. Dayato Vishayan Pumsam. Krishna is warning us, don't meditate on the objects of this world. And that may be difficult because we see so many things. Some of these things are very attractive. Just like I always use the example of Discovery Channel. All the wonderful phenomena of this world. And Krishna says at the end of the 10th chapter that all this, not only on this planet, we explore this planet to some degree. Just like I was mentioning the other day, when I went to Thailand, I was walking down one avenue, a big restaurant, and had these little aquariums. What is this, like a zoological exhibit in the restaurant? And it had all these strange looking creatures. Every one of them had something other than 2 eyes, 2 legs, and 2 arms. They had 10 legs or 4 eyes, or strange looking creatures. And then I realized that it's this is your menu. But it just the strange looking creatures. And then I saw another man. I saw him catching bugs. What's he catching? But then I saw he throws them in this hot oil, catches another bug, throws it in, and scoops it out and puts it in a little bag, and then, So I was just thinking, how we've deviated from even what is human diet. But all these things are fascinating. People see these programs, Animal Kingdom, Discovery Channel, and they think, I don't know what else is out there, think that, it's such a wonderful place. And Krishna says, all these things, not only on this planet, but within the whole universe, are just a spark of my splendor. Otherwise, even the 3 worlds, just like Vishnu is manifesting unlimited universes from the pores in his transcendental body. And from all these universes come out. Scientists are so enamored by these universes. And by this universe, they think there's only one universe. And we know there's unlimited universes. And so enamored by this. And Krishna says, and Mahavishnu, he does all this while he's sleeping. Now, how much effort does it take to sleep? Of course, if we have insomnia, that's a different thing. But, how much effort does it take to sleep? Not much. But yet, we can, by Mahavishnu, create all these wonders and wonders which we cannot even conceive of. We read in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam about different heavenly planets and mangoes as big as elephants. And when they fall to the ground, it creates rivers of mango juice. And that mango juice, when it hardens, it turns into gold. And, we're here struggling, trying to get some paper or digital money, which has no meaning. It's not backed by anything. It's only backed by a promise that we will trade this, and you'll get this, and he'll get this. And so artificial, totally artificial. And we read all these things, it sounds beyond our imagination, therefore it gets labeled as mythology. This is all mythology. Just like I see it all the time. Even in India, I see people, even Brahmins, say, oh, Hindu mythology. And so they don't understand. And Krishna says, this is nothing. This is nothing compared to Goloka Vrindavan. Because when Rupa Goswami describes Goloka Vrindavan, Krishna's transcendental planet, the overwhelming characteristic is love. Because that is the one thing that everybody in this world is looking for and not finding. They find it to some degree. Srila Prabhupada said, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Padma Purana, says that the greatest love in this world is the love of a mother for their child. And that's very, very strong. But it's not complete. It's not permanent. And it doesn't increase as time goes on. If anything, it may decrease. And it will disappear. It will disappear. The son dies, the mother dies, and it's finished. I mean, there's some remnant there. As Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur called it, that Shmasana Vairagya, that when you go to the cremation, you're lamenting, you think a little philosophically, and then a few weeks later, life goes on, and everything gets forgotten. And this is the nature of the time element. The time element destroys everything in this material world. But the one thing, actually two things according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the things that are never affected by the time element, and the two only real manifestations of spirit in this world are the jiva, the spirit soul, ourselves, and the holy name. These are the two manifestations. Everything else is subject to change. Of course, we have deities, but the deity itself, even though we know that the deity is Krishna, and Krishna is eternal, the external manifestation of the deity will disappear. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur didn't even include the deities as permanent. Krishna is permanent, but his permanence is not fully understood in the form of the deity. So the point is that this is everything we see here will be destroyed by this time element. And so therefore in this verse, it's a very logical conclusion. He said these three miseries, if you can go beyond these three miseries, not be disturbed by them. Now one may say, but isn't it natural? You get sick, we go to the doctor. Even Prabhupada went to the doctor. And everybody, doctors have always been Ayurveda. So isn't it natural? Yes. It's natural to try to minimize or eliminate these miseries. But we shouldn't spend all our time on it. And the reason for minimizing it, which is given here, vitaraga bhaya krodha, so that these things will not affect us. If you can do this, if you can tolerate these three miseries. And the reality is, according to Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, you have to tolerate them. You may try to diminish them, but as Prasad Maharaj says, dukkaushadam tadapi dukkam, that the effort to eliminate miseries is generally more miserable than the misery itself. Just like one time in El Salvador, I was walking, we had a little farm, and I was walking, I saw they're building this big factory. And wherever they put these factories, especially in third world countries, they build 500 houses for the workers. And all the houses look exactly the same. If you don't paint your house a certain color, you probably wouldn't even know which one it was. You have to count some number, 1, 2, 3, that's it. So, and so I saw this man with an old truck moving into one of these houses. And I looked at him, he looked like a farmer. So I said, you're moving, you're going to work in this factory? Oh, yes. He looked very enthusiastic. And I said, you previously lived in the country? Oh, yes. So how much land did you have? Oh, I think he said like half a hectare. Okay. And how much land is there in this house? Oh, it's 55 meters, or whatever it was, something like that, 55, 60 meters. So you trade, 5,000 meters squared for 55. Yes, but here I have running water and light switch. I said, yes, you do have that. So I said, how many hours did you work when you were planting? Oh, I had to work many hours. But every day? No, not every day. Only when planting and harvesting. And I said, so what did you do in the rest of the time? Oh, talk to the neighbors, this and that. I said, here, how many hours will you be working? Only 8 hours a day. And only 6 days a week. I get Sundays off. I said, so we went on talking about it. And then I said, now, do you understand the water here is processed water? You probably had a well. Oh, yeah, very good water. So this water here has chlorine, fluoride, this and that, and who knows what else. And after we spoke for about 25 minutes, he said, maybe I should have stayed on the farm. So the point is that this is what Prahlad Maharaj says. You get some little convenience, like we have air conditioning, or we have a fan, or another country you have a heater, and you may have a heater and a fan, or a heater and an air conditioner, and then you're really advanced. But how much do you have to work to maintain these things? You have to buy the air conditioner, you have to buy the heater, you have to do this, you have to maintain it. Just like Markandeya Rishi. When Markandeya Rishi got the blessing, which turned out to be more of a curse from the Lord, he said he wanted to experience the Lord's illusory energy. And the Lord said, no, you're beyond that. Yes, but I want to know, why are people so attracted to this illusory energy? He said, all right. So he gave him the blessing that he would live for 7 kalpas. That's a long time. That's like millions and millions and millions of years. And then the first experience was that he was floating in the ocean of devastation, being tossed. I mean, you can imagine, here we go to, North Shore, and there's some, 3 or 4 or 5 foot waves. These are waves like, 10 miles high, devastation. And you can imagine being on a 10-foot high wave, and it throws you down. what that feels like. We go on these little 3-foot waves and they could break your shoulder. I was with one devotee in South India, and we were riding the waves, and he broke his shoulder, strained his neck. So what to speak of a 10-mile wave? Pretty, but he couldn't die. He just got tossed around. He finally took refuge in what turned out to be Nilachal. The only thing that was above water was the resting place of Lord Jagannath. Because if we worship Jagannath, we'll always be above water. So after like 4 kalpas, he was meditating very deeply. He was actually meditating, thinking, why did I do this? But meditating on the Lord, and and he had many disciples. So the disciples said, Swamiji or Gurudev, whatever they called him, we want to build you a shelter. No, not necessarily. At least some roof. And he said, no, I'll only be here for a short while. Only 7 kalpas. Only X million amount of years. So this is what it means to be beyond the miseries of material existence. And we understand these things are going to happen. And you can't escape these miseries. But you can if you ignore them. Otherwise, they will happen to the body, but they will not happen to you. If you can actually do the other part, because the other part is much more different. Being indifferent to material happiness. That's a very difficult thing to do. Most of us are pursuing material happiness, like anything. Just like King Yayati, he was a very great king, and he was pious, but he was very, very much attracted to the opposite sex. So much so that he ended up being cursed, that because he did what his father-in-law, who happened to be Shukracharya, said not to do. Don't mess with the other lady. He's a Kshatriya, thinking the other lady wants my company, I must do it. It's the duty of a Kshatriya. And he got cursed to take old age. Immediately, he got his old age, and then he had 4 sons, and he thought, the son is supposed to help the father. No. So he approached his first son, Yadu, and he said, please take my old age. And he said, if I do that, I'll end up like you, wanting to get rid of it. So thank you very much. But he was actually, this was coming from Yoga Maya, the internal energy, because he had to begin the Yadu dynasty, and that Yadu dynasty, Krishna would appear. So no way, he could not take old age and not have children. Otherwise Krishna wouldn't appear, and we would be just living here in Trinidad without Krishna. And and then the next 2 sons, they said, no way. No, we want to enjoy life. So he sent them off to some miserable place to live. And then his last son, Puru, he said, will you take my old age? And Puru said, my dear father, of course I will. I'm just lamenting about one thing. What is that? That I didn't offer to do that. And Srila Prabhupada explains, this is the difference between first class, second class, and 10th class disciple. That the two brothers of Puru, who refused to take any action, they were 10th class. And Puru was, he ended up being second class, but he lamented, I was not first class. First class means you anticipate what the spiritual master wants based on all the instructions that you've got. Not that you speculate, but based on, the instructions and teachings, you anticipate. And second class means you follow the orders. And 10th class means, third class means you do it reluctantly. And 10th class means you don't do it. So, anyway, Puru took the old age. And Yayati was young, and he began to enjoy it with his wife. But then he began to think, I have cursed my son. And he was enjoying the intimate relationship with his wife. And then he began to realize that we're enjoying something very temporary. And the law of diminishing returns, which is something that plagues us in relation to material happiness. The pleasure will always diminish. Every time you try to get the same pleasure. If you're lucky, you can get the same pleasure. But generally it will diminish. And whereas spiritual happiness is anandam buddhivardhanam, it always increases. That's how we can know. Sometimes we call ourselves devotees. But if you're really a devotee, then you will be becoming more blissful at every moment. If you're a first class devotee. If you're a second class devotee, you may increase little by little. And if you're a third class devotee, you'll be blaming everyone why I'm not happy. And so anyway, Yayati finally he realized this. And he said, give me back my old age. Puru, I was very unjust to you. Give me back my old age. I will accept it. So the point is that we have to accept what is in our destiny. And if we accept it and we become very Krishna conscious, then this will happen. Vita raga bhayaka. We will conquer all attachments, all aversions, and all anger. Because anger is the result of attachment and aversion. Attachment and aversion, Srila Prabhupada said, are two sides of the same coin. The desire to enjoy this material world. You're very attached, and then Srila Prabhupada referred to a Greek fable, Aesop's fable, of a fox that's trying to reach some grapes. He's jumping and jumping, can't reach them, and he concludes the grapes are sour. This is what happens to us. So this material happiness is not so good, and especially it results in anger, frustration, disillusion, and so many different things. And we see that people become angry over practically everything because our desires, especially if you're trying to take up Krishna consciousness. Because Krishna will help you by frustrating your desires. He's very good at it. Material nature is also good at it, but she makes you think that, just like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says, Jeev jago, Gora Chandra bole. That wake up, spirit soul, see that you're sleeping in the lap of Maya. So Maya has us in her lap, just like a mother, Mother Durga. Nobody thinks about, many of the Hindus, they worship Durga. But they don't think about what does her name mean. It means making everything very difficult. That's what Durga means. Dur, difficult, ga, to proceed. So she's taking care of you, and then she slaps you, and then throws you down. And then you get up again and you say please, and then you're in the lap again, and then and it goes on and on and on and on. So she's, in one sense, she's cheating us. But Krishna, he sends us difficulties, and he doesn't give us the illusion that, I will make it better. He explains very clearly, right here, and in so many other places in Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, and throughout all the Shastras. Chaitanya Charitamrita gives us a hope. Bhagavatam gives us a hope. Bhagavad Gita gives us a hope at the end. Because Krishna explains all these things that are very difficult to do, generally speaking, when we're very conditioned, very attached to this world. And then we get to the end, and he says, give all this up and surrender to me, and I will take care of you. But first of all, most people, they read Bhagavad Gita. It seems difficult. And then at the end, you have to give up everything, and then with the hope that Krishna will, make everything better, which he does. But sometimes we don't have that faith. So Bhagavatam teaches us what will come after surrender. But still there's some difficulties. But in Chaitanya Charitamrita, by associating with the devotees, everything becomes blissful. That is the nature. Of course, it starts out with a little philosophy that's sometimes a little difficult to digest, but such beautiful pastimes, Lord Chaitanya. Because Lord Chaitanya is so merciful. And therefore, Lord Chaitanya is giving us the solution that is here in every verse of Bhagavad Gita. And this Krishna, essentially, in this verse, he's saying that. Surrender to me. No. Surrender to your destiny, which will give you some difficulties, it will give you some happiness. Srila Prabhupada said so many times that, quoting two places where it's one in the Bhagavatam, it says in the Bhagavatam that Prasad Maharaj, he's telling his friends that don't strive for happiness. It will come. Just like you don't strive for misery, but it comes. And the same thing is said later on in the Bhagavatam, that you don't have to, in the first canto of Bhagavatam, it says the same thing, that just as nobody tries to be miserable. I mean, even nowadays, some people are so exhausted trying to squeeze some pleasure out of their material life that they actually look for misery. They actually try to find happiness in misery. Or some people, when they can't be happy, they find happiness in making others miserable. All of us know of someone like that, maybe a few people. Some people have postgraduate degrees in making you miserable. But actually, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, this person should be your dearest companion. When he was present, there was one man that always criticized him. And his disciples were so, they wanted to kill him practically. It was like Krishna holding back Bhima when Shishupal was criticizing Krishna. Bhima was just, Krishna. And so Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, no, everyone has their destiny. And then one day he heard this big kirtan in front of his little residence, and he went out, saw the devotees all blissfully chanting, dancing. So he called one devotee. What has happened? What is this? Very nice chanting and dancing. What? Oh, that man who's always criticizing you, he finally got the reaction for his offenses. He left his body. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati put a very serious look on his face. He said, he was my best friend. So this is what this verse is also talking about. This anger and this fear and attachment will give you so much more problem than, these things are our reaction to when things don't go how we want them to go. Things don't turn out as I want. Even though Krishna says that don't be attached to the results. He says that all through Bhagavad Gita. So many different verses. Don't be attached to the results of your action. But we become so attached. And therefore that attachment creates raga, this attachment, bhaya, it creates fear. Well, I'm attached to this object, I have acquired it. What is the fear? I will lose it. And therefore Krishna says, Nir yoga kshema atmavan, that don't try to acquire something. It's very difficult. And it's even more difficult to keep it, to preserve it. Just like someone buys an automobile. So you have to spend, save money or spend a lot of money, maybe make payments. But then you have it, it's new, everything works. But then after a few years, then you have to spend money to repair it, and more effort. And then, at some point, it will break, and you have to give it up. More difficult. Each one is more difficult. To acquire it is difficult, to preserve it is more difficult, and to give it up is more difficult. And therefore Srila Prabhupada said, people who think they have everything are those who suffer the most. Because when it's taken away from them, they become, just like Srila Prabhupada gave the example, one judge at the time of Gandhi's movement in India, where Gandhi was saying to boycott the British. And so this one judge, he was working for the British. So Subhash Chandra Bose, the revolutionary leader, Srila Prabhupada's friend, classmate, who turned out to be the one who actually liberated India, they told people, work with Gandhi's movement. So they came to this judge, and Subhash Chandra Bose said, you give up this post, and we will supply you with something. The judge said, no, I don't want to. And he said, if you don't give it up, it will be taken away from you. But if you give it up, we'll give you. He was making 50,000 rupees a month. Now at that time, 50,000 rupees a month would be like, a few million TT a month. He was making. And so they said, we will give you 5,000 rupees a month. You only work for Gandhi's movement. So 5,000, was probably like making like, 500 or 70, 80,000 TT. Plenty for most people. And Prabhupada said he died of anxiety. Having to give up all that money, all that, everything he was attached to, created fear, and then anger, frustration. Because when we become fearful that we'll lose something, and then when we lose it, we become angry. And this is the cycle that goes on, attachment, fear, I'll lose it, and I lose it, and I become angry. And this cycle keeps us in the cycle of birth and death within this material world. So the point I wanted to make is sthita dhir muni uchate. One should learn to be a sthita dhir muni. The other munis described here, yasam material, yasamidam, nabinam, that this is like philosophers. They take a little philosophy from here and a little bit from there, and they make their own philosophy. And then somebody takes some of theirs and makes another philosophy. And so, but the sthita dhir muni, he has perfect philosophy. Because he gets it from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He gets it from Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu. And therefore, he's able to do these things, to give up material happiness. And why? As I explained, Jayato Vishayan Pumsam, Krishna says later on, that when you meditate on the objects of the senses, then Teshu Sangha Bhajayate, then you develop an attachment. And then sanga sanjayate kama. And from that attachment, you develop desire. And then kama krodha vijayate. And then from that attachment, from that desire, comes anger. And then from anger, krodha bhavati samoha. You become illusion. You become bewildered. And then from bewilderment, you lose your intelligence. And when you lose your intelligence, you fall down into the cycle of birth and death. So, all this starts from just meditating on the objects of pleasure. And to give an example, we see something that an enjoyable object. If we think that belongs to Krishna, then we don't desire it. And if we desire it, it's for Krishna. And therefore that desire becomes spiritualized. So this is what Sri Narottam Das Thakur says. You have to spiritualize your desires. You have to see everything as belonging to Krishna and use it in Krishna's service. And then it will become spiritualized. Otherwise, this very destructive force of anger. And I've seen it here in Trinidad and anywhere I go. When people become angry with one another, what happens? They become angry. They don't want to deal with that person. And bad feelings, negativity. And so this anger, that's why Krishna says, it destroys, it devours everything. It takes away the possibility that we can experience and relish spiritual life. It takes away that possibility. If you become angry, if you become frustrated, and all this comes from contemplating the objects of the senses. So Krishna says here, better to understand that everything belongs to Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada so beautifully says in the purport that, how do we do this? Very simple, you just do two things. Whenever you have a problem, you think, I deserve so much more. I have lived for millions of lifetimes through millions of bodies, and every body we're in, just like you see, the dogs, the cats, they think this is a wonderful body. Just like Indra. When Indra was, because he disobeyed his spiritual master, he had to take the body of a pig. And after some time, Lord Brahma came and said, okay, Indra, you can go back to heaven. And he said, no, I don't. Why should I go? I have my pig family. No. We have nice mud, nice stool. No. Everything any pig could want. No. And why should I go back? No. This unknown place. And Brahma had to force him. And then he realized, what illusion. So, I may go a little over. I want to tell another story about illusion. This is from the Skanda Purana. No. So one time Krishna and Narada Muni were speaking, and they were on the bank of a river. And so Narada Muni said, my dear Lord, I've never experienced illusion because I've always been engaged in your service. Please let me experience illusion. Krishna said, no, you don't want to experience. And Narada said, no, my Lord, I have to understand how people can be so confused. I've never experienced this. Sometimes we want to experience something in this world, but the story is to help us not do that. No. So then Krishna said, go bathe in the river. Oh, it was a lake, lake. Go bathe in the lake, and when you come back, I will explain. So he went into the lake, and then he went under the water, and when he came up, he was very far from the shore, and he couldn't swim, he couldn't fly, he couldn't do anything that he normally does. He was struggling, and he saw a little tiny figure. He started calling out, help, help, help. No, he'd never experienced such a helpless condition. And then there was a king, and the king saw someone in the water drowning. The king came out, pulled him out of the water. When he got out of the water, he looked at his body, and it wasn't Narada, he was Naradi. He had the body of a woman. And he completely forgot who he was. And she saw this king, very handsome, strong, saved my life. My dear, your king, please accept me as your wife. He said, oh, you're such a beautiful woman. Did your boat capsize? Oh, I don't know. Amnesia. No. And so he took her, they got married, they had 50 children. No, I mean, this happens in Vedic times. Nowadays, 50 children. I had one devotee in Mexico. He said, I want to have 25 children. And he went through 2 wives, and he had like 5 with one, 6 with another one. He got a 3rd wife. He had another 5 kids. And then the 3rd wife said, forget it, And he wanted to get a 4th wife. And I said, Prabhu, I think, it's a little too much. He settled for 14. So 50. And, she was so happy, all these wonderful sons. They were all sons, every one of them. And so then the king was getting old, so he divided up the kingdom amongst the 50 sons. But some of them who were a little more, capable, said, I should get more. Why am I getting the same as him? He's not capable as I am. They started arguing. They started fighting. And they killed one another. And she said, how cruel is God? How miserable. How can he do this? And she was lamenting and crying. And the king tried to console her, and he died. She said, listen, I don't believe anymore in any God or anything like that. And then one Brahmin came and preached to her about, and she listened very carefully. And she said, yes, I accept you. That Brahmin was actually Krishna. And so then he said, my dear lady, you've suffered so much. Why don't you go in this ocean and bathe? So she went into the ocean, went underwater, came out, and saw Krishna standing on the bank. Then she came out, it was Narada Muni. So he came up to Krishna. Krishna was smiling. I said, so, Narada was like completely, astounded. And he fell down and he bowed to Krishna and he stood up and said, so did you see something? No. My dear Lord. So he said, so do you want to experience illusion? No, my Lord. No illusion. No. So this is what it's like. We're actually pure, and we're pure spirit soul. But when we go into this ocean of material existence, then we lose all our sense of reality. And so this verse and so many other verses. And then it says, and when you get some favorable condition, otherwise happiness, material happiness, don't think that you deserve it. Think that the Lord is giving you a special opportunity, special compensation to be able to serve Him better. And if you get misery, think that the Lord is giving me an opportunity to internalize and to meditate on devotional service. And in that way, we can escape the up and down, the happiness and distress of material life, and we can conquer these enemies, lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, and madness. So we should be very careful to try to avoid these things. All these things that cause negativity, these things, Srila Prabhupada said, The only thing that can stop this Krishna consciousness movement is internal. And what we don't realize, whenever we become angry at other devotees, or frustrated, or judgmental, then we are slowing down the progress of Krishna consciousness. This movement, Srila Prabhupada in the beginning in 1967, 66, it was 66. He started teaching the devotees Sanskrit, and but they weren't so good at learning it. And then one devotee started learning it, and he started asking Prabhupada all kinds of strange questions. But Prabhupada said, "No more Sanskrit." And and then Srila Prabhupada said, "Actually, I can conquer this material world in 18 days, but you are not ready." No. Prabhupada said that. So, and this is the power of the Krishna consciousness movement. This is the power of chanting the holy name. It can destroy, completely obliterate and destroy material existence. So powerful. So powerful that Lord Chaitanya said, you don't even need to be initiated to experience the full power of the holy name. You don't even need to practice Purashcharya, which prepares you to get initiated. It's so powerful. But of course, Srila Prabhupada explains, because we're conditioned, we do need to be initiated so that we can perform proper activities to become purified. And so the only thing that's stopping this movement from taking over the world, and just one more little story, which I've told a few times, but which is that when Srila Prabhupada in 1974, big problem between Pakistan and India, Srila Prabhupada told the devotees that there will be a war, and between India and Pakistan, the United States will take the side of Pakistan, Russia will take the side of India, and there will be a world war. Devotees were some devotees were fearful, some devotees were bewildered, asking, what do we do, Prabhupada? One devotee said, what do we do, Prabhupada? Chant Hare Krishna. And some devotees even began to dig in their yard, dig out a bunker. And really, that happened. And then the next year, the leaders came back and they said, Srila Prabhupada, what happened to the war? Srila Prabhupada said, Krishna changed his mind. And Prabhupada said, because you are distributing my books, because of the Sankirtan movement. So this Sankirtan movement can stop all these wars, all these problems in the material world. But we have to be fully committed. And to be fully committed, we have to be unified. And to be unified, we have to give up these negativities that cause us to waste our energy in fighting amongst ourselves, and disagreeing with each other and having bad feelings, etc. And as all of our Shastras recommend, see not only all devotees, but all living entities, manadena, with full respect. And then Krishna consciousness can begin to take over the world. We're already seeing in India. In India, our ISKCON movement is on the news regularly. It's just like I've seen ISKCON on the news practically as much as any political situation. New ISKCON temple is opening. This is like on the biggest news channels all over the country. Such and such, ISKCON's doing this, ISKCON doing that. And so this is the power of this Krishna consciousness movement. So we should do the same thing here. We should be in the headlines every day. The Krishna devotees have just opened a new beautiful temple, in such and such a place. The Krishna devotees are distributing food to thousands of needy people. The Krishna conscious devotees have stopped the wave of crime by making everyone happy by chanting Hare Krishna, and so many other things. So it's going to all happen. We should think. Prabhupada said, my disease is that I think big. And so if we're followers of Srila Prabhupada, we should think big. Not just think, let me go to the Sunday Feast, let me take a little prasadam, and then I'll go home and do what I want. No. That will not conquer Maya, even individually or collectively. No. But we have to follow in the footsteps of our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada and think like he thought. Understand read the Lilamrita and so many other biographies of Srila Prabhupada and see what it takes to be a Mahabhagavata. Because that's the real solution. That's how you get out of this material world. You become a Mahabhagavata. Not that you become a Mahabhogi, a great enjoyer of this world. You become a great devotee of the Lord. And either you leave this world or you help others to leave this world. That's our duty in Krishna consciousness. So these are some thoughts I wanted to share with all of you. Thank you very much for your kind attention. If there's any real quick question or comment. Yeah.
Ramaj, gross attachment is one thing. Body, money, family, so forth. What I experience is that attachment to one's status and control, position, name, fame, glorification. Subtle attachment is much more difficult.
Yeah.
So how do you recommend we get rid of that?
Yeah. Subtle attachment is more difficult because it's more difficult to identify. Just like someone says they're drinking a beer, saying, am I drinking a beer or not? No, you know very clearly this is Maya. Smoking a cigarette. Am I smoking? Is this Maya? No, you eat. But little subtle thoughts of grandeur, how others can appreciate me, how I can play kartals faster than anyone else, how I can do 50 mridanga beats in 5 seconds, and how I can cook better than anyone, distribute more books, speak better, learn more verses. When we think like this, then that's subtle. And therefore, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, the greatest Maya in this world is when you become a great devotee. This is your biggest Maya. You become a great devotee and people began to praise you. And people began to glorify you. And then you begin to believe them. And that is the biggest Maya. He's so wonderful. He's so pure. Maybe they're right. Fall down. So, how do we conquer that? By following the Shikshastika. But not like being proud of your humility. No. But actually becoming humble. Any other question, comment?
When we were in Ukraine, right? One Matali asked how we can overcome fear in that situation. But for example, when we are in a different situation, very comfortable at home, how we develop that kind of.
Well, actually, I found in Ukraine, it's easier to overcome fear of a missile falling on your head than the fear of losing some object in this world. I found the devotees, one time there was a missile attack, and missiles were falling all over the place. And the devotees were just chanting, in the temple room, Hare Krishna. And I'm sitting there like, Hare Krishna. So, so this fear Srila Prabhupada said, what is fear? It is being constantly threatened by non-existence. And where does that come from? I'm eternal. So thinking that I'm this body. So we overcome fear by simply understand I'm not this body. And we practice that. And we practice that by doing what's said in this verse. Not striving for happiness and not striving for getting rid of misery. Just striving for being Krishna conscious. And then the misery will become unnoticeable. Just like Srila Prabhupada, one time Jadharani was painting a picture. So Prabhupada came to inspect it. And he stepped on a thumbtack, like right directly on it with his heel. And you can imagine how that feels. And Prabhupada just picked up his foot, pulled out the tack, and said, you should not leave these on the floor. And Prabhupada showed how detached from his body, when he was leaving this world, the doctor said, I cannot imagine how much pain he is in. He said, most of us, we have a layer of muscle and fat between the nerves and and what you're sitting on. He said he has no fat and no muscle, just a thin layer of muscle. So he's even just touching him with a loop like this much will cause so much pain. And Prabhupada was translating the Bhagavatam. So that's what it means to be detached. So this is the example, because one devotee said, Srila Prabhupada, it gives me so much pain to see how much you're suffering. Prabhupada opened his eyes and said, don't think it will not happen to you. Otherwise he's saying, prepare yourself. Prepare. This life, having a life in Krishna consciousness, means to prepare ourselves for the time of death. As the Bengali proverb says, you may think you're doing very nice sadhana, but it will be tested at the time of death. It should, otherwise, what it's saying is, don't do mechanical sadhana. Let your sadhana be real. Let it produce Krishna consciousness. Not some mechanical thing. We rattle off some saying, we do this, it's all mechanical. I chant the holy name when I'm thinking about something else. Don't make it mechanical, make it real. Here is Radha, here is Krishna, here is Vrindavan. So I don't want to delay the artik any longer. Thank you all very much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Rishi Gaurnitai ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki jai, Jai Gaur Premanandi.